Whether you're brand new to Marvel Rivals or coming from games like Overwatch, these 5 game-changing tips are going to help you take control of matches and climb ranks. I've analyzed countless high-level matches, and I can tell you from personal experience, you'll see these mistakes even in Grandmaster Plus lobbies. And this isn't just another basic tips video. The premise of each tip is simple, but we're covering advanced strategies that top players are using right now in the current meta. I spent countless hours analyzing top 500 gameplay, elite scrimmages, and using these concepts myself. Venom can sneak a melee in between his tentacle hits as well. Did you guys know this? And let's be real, you're either getting absolutely rolled or you're struggling to maintain consistency in your matches. I'm there too. We're all striving to get better here. Maybe you're unstoppable one game and then getting completely shut down the next. I get it, I've been there. But here's the thing, you're about to learn what separates the top 1% from everyone else. Tip number 1, elite positioning and map control. Listen, this is massive. I cannot stress this enough. I've watched countless ranked players throw games by stepping off the point for literally half a second. That split second decision or non-decision, it's the difference between winning and losing. Here's what the best players do. They treat the point like Winter Soldier treats his combat missions, with absolute precision. When you have point control, you dictate the entire flow of the game. Think about it. But let's break this down even further. There are 3 key aspects to elite positioning that nobody talks about enough. First, understand your hero's effective range. Winter Soldier players in top 500 aren't just mindlessly shooting, they're positioning in that sweet short to mid-range spot away from their target. Why? Because that's where they can maximize damage while maintaining shield generation from abilities. It's these micro optimizations that make a massive difference. We'll have more on this later, but just think about this. What's the maximum amount of utility that I can get from every single action I take in the game? If you have more of those on average than the enemy team does, that will ultimately lead to more wins than losses over a long period of time. Second, you need to master high ground control. Watch any top Thor player, they're not just flying around randomly, they're systematically taking control of key positions that give them both offensive and defensive advantages. The recent buff to Thor's Awakening rune timing makes this even more crucial. Third, you need to understand sightlines. The best group players aren't just throwing down walls randomly or spur of the moment. That happens in the heat of the moment in even top level matches, but the higher you get, the more this is minimized. High rank Groots are cutting off specific angles that force enemies into disadvantageous positions. Top 500 group players are masters at completely shutting down an entire team by controlling their movement options with perfect wall placement. And again, if you see top level players, they have a real habitual way of playing. They have set rotation paths if they're Black Panthers, they have repetitive movements if they're Venom. A lot of top level players in a lot of different games have a lot of repetitive movements because they can more or less kind of shut their brain off for that one aspect so they can use their brain for other key moments in game. Let's talk about practical application. When you're attacking the point on any map, you should be thinking about 3 things. Your primary position, this is your ideal fighting spot, usually high ground or an angle that gives you maximum impact while maintaining safety. For Hawkeye, this might be the elevated platform overlooking the point with clear sight lines to both the objective and potential flanking routes. Your fallback position, this is your safe spot when things go wrong. It should have cover, be within range of your strategist, and offer multiple escape routes. Think of it as your home base that you can always return to when pressured. And then number 3, your rotation paths. These are your pre-planned routes between positions that keep you safe while moving. These include health pack locations, cover options, and quick access to both point and team support. The best players memorize these paths and use them to maintain constant pressure while staying alive. If you're getting value from these tips and want to level up your game, consider subscribing. I create weekly Marvel Rivals content including guides, improvement series, and more. Plus, we're building an amazing community all trying to improve together. Tip number 2, resource management. The difference between good and great players, resource tracking. When Winter Soldier is strolling around the meta with a 275 HP pool plus shields from abilities, you need to understand exactly when to engage. Think about it. Every ability you use needs to create value. Here's what most players get wrong. They either spam abilities the moment they're off cooldown, or they wait for the perfect moment that never comes, or it's been so long they could have used that ability 4 times by that point. But watch any top 500 match and you'll see them either spamming key abilities in a particular way to get value, it's different than just mindlessly spamming it, or they're holding those abilities for pre-planned perfect moments. Doctor Strange players in Eternity don't just throw out portals. They already know when and where they're going to portal in a match, generally speaking. They understand, yeah, they're probably going to push us off the point here. We're probably only going to have 40 seconds left. I'm going to use my portal then. We'll portal not directly on top of the point, that sort of deal. Let me break down exactly how the pros manage their resources. First, ability tracking. The best players in the world aren't just tracking their own cooldowns, they're tracking everyone's. Of course, this isn't always possible to do, and maybe they only need to keep one or two other players' cooldowns in mind, but this is a game changer. Let's use a real example. When you're playing against Adam Warlock, you need to know that Soul Bond has a 30-second cooldown. That means after he uses it, he's a sitting duck. But here's what separates good players from great ones. They're also tracking the secondary effects of those abilities. That Soul Bond might be down, but did the enemy team get value from the additional HP they gained? Did they position aggressively because of it or knock out a player or two on your team? Second, ultimate economy. You need to understand ultimate charge rates for every hero. You don't need to memorize the numbers, but you need to understand the flow of them in game. To complicate this a bit, some players are just better than others, even in high ranks. So for example, in a given match, you may experience Star-Lord's Galactic Legend ult charges roughly 15% faster than Luna's ult, let's say, which means you need to account for that timing difference in team fights. Third, and this is a small one but still worth mentioning, health pack timing. The best players actually treat health packs like their ultimate abilities in certain instances. I'm looking at you, Captain America mains. They know when they respawn and they plan their engagements around them. That can change the outcome of a duel and ultimately the outcome of a team fight. Let's talk about practical resource management for different roles now. For duelists, track your primary damage abilities. If you're Punisher, this could include your team up with Rocket, for example, know your escape cooldowns, and understand your burst windows. This could also be a team up with Rocket or Storm's E ability. For Vanguards, manage your defensive cooldowns, know how long it takes for your shields or health buffs to regenerate, and coordinate with your strategists. For strategists, priority health management. Who are you healing first and why? Does that ever change? Have a clear hierarchy in mind. Crowd control ability timing. Invisible Woman's force physics push-pull or psionic vortex or Luna's freeze. Ultimate charge optimization. What I mean by this is position yourself to maximize your actions per minute, which will maximize how quickly you get your ult. If you're a Rocket Raccoon main, you can bank heals off walls and get a good bit away from your team and even flank enemy duelists and deal damage. There are endless ways you can approach this, but be constantly thinking about your positioning and how you can either be healing someone or doing damage. Here's a perfect example. In a recent top 500 lobby, I watched a Doctor Strange player who never used his portal unless he could guarantee pretty much two things consistently. Number one was his team could follow up, and number two, he could position close enough to touch the point without losing the match, and here's the key piece, his strategist had enough cover so they wouldn't get burnt down by the entire enemy team focusing them immediately. He did not put the portal directly on top of the point. You're just dumping your entire team there with all of your squishies who don't need to necessarily be on the point at that particular time. That's the level of resource management and next step thinking we're talking about. It's not just about having your abilities, it's using them in the right ways. Tip number 3 would be team composition mastery. Let's talk numbers because this is crucial. The data doesn't lie. 2-2-2 compositions, 2 Vanguards, 2 strategists, 2 duelists are maintaining a 53% win rate across all ranks currently. That's insane. The next best would be 1 Vanguard and 3 duelists at 49.2%. Here's what most players miss. It's not just about picking these comps, it's about understanding why they work. When you're running Adam Warlock with Star-Lord and Mantis, you're not just picking strong heroes, you're creating a self-reviving combo for half of your team to take advantage of. Let me break down the current meta compositions and why they're dominating. The double Vanguard setup. When you pair Magneto with Captain America, you're not just getting double shields, you're creating multiple layers of space control. The key is understanding engagement timing. Top teams will often stagger their Vanguard pushes, creating what I like to call rolling thunder effect. One Vanguard pushes in, draws resources from the enemy team. Then the second tank comes in when the enemy team is vulnerable or has used key abilities. The strategist synergy. Adam Warlock and Mantis have a high win rate when paired together. Why? It's not just about their healing output, which is kind of middle of the road or even lackluster at times, especially when Adam doesn't have his E ability, but their utility abilities create what we call kind of zones of control. When Mantis uses her allied inspiration, which is a 12% damage buff to whoever receives it, while Adam Warlock has Soul Bond active, offensive, it creates an incredible stout defensive position while boosting key damage dealers. Duelist combinations. There are a ton of combinations you could list here, but the Punisher paired with Spider-Man can be a nasty combo. Punisher provides consistent pressure while Spider-Man creates chaos in the backline. And here's that sprinkle of advanced tidbit right here. It's all about timing engagement windows. The best teams coordinate certain ability and or ultimates together to ensure kills. If you have a Punisher spraying an enemy team with his turret while Spidey is popping his ultimate, that could be the difference between winning the fight or Spider-Man's teleporting back to spawn. Let's talk about counterpicking real quick. Against Double Vanguard, this is the meta, so high ability heroes with displacement abilities work well here. Think Winter Soldier with his hook or Thor with his dash. Against heavy strategist comps, you could focus on burst damage and dive potential. Against duelist heavy teams, you could layer your crowd control abilities and consider beefing up your sustain and healing potential so you could create a composition around that. Tip number 4, combat fundamentals. This is where most players think they're doing fine, but there's always room for improvement. Here's a perfect example. When Groot and Moon Knight coordinate their ultimates, it's devastating, but it's not just about the combo. It's about understanding when and where to use it. The best players aren't just looking for the big play. They're creating situations where the enemy has no choice but to walk into it. And let's break down the core combat principles that separate average players from the elite. Engagement timing. This is absolutely crucial. The majority of lost fights come from poor engagement timing one way or another. Let me break this down. Primary engagement. Your first point of contact should always be calculated. Top Psylocke players don't just walk in shooting. They wait for specific triggers. Enemy cooldowns being used, teammate positioning, resource advantage, map control secured, or they've taken an off angle or a flanking. Secondary engagement. This is where most players mess up. After the initial engagement, you need to be ready for the counter engage. For example, I see many players use all their cooldowns in the first 3 seconds, then wonder why they lose the extended fight. Did you use both your stepping disc teleports as magic? Well, now you're gonna have to take a slow stroll out of that fight. Good luck with that. Advanced combat mechanics. There are 3 key mechanics that pro players use consistently. Animation canceling, like Doctor Strange canceling his reload by simply popping his shield around the 3/4 reload mark. Venom can sneak a melee in between his tentacle hits as well. Did you guys know this? If you want an animation canceling video for all heroes that have them, just let me know. Number 2, ability stacking. This is when you layer abilities for maximum effect. For example, Hela's Soul Drainer Orb and Invisible Woman's Psionic Vortex, Captain America's Shield Throw and Namor's right click, Iron Man's E ability and Storm's E for maximum damage output. There's a lot you can do with timing and stacking abilities to better your chances for a kill or to boost your sustain. Number 3, space creation. This is a commonly overlooked aspect of high-level combat. You're not just fighting, you're manipulating space as well. Use vertical movement to create unexpected angles. You can force enemies to rotate through unfavorable positions. You can create dead zones where enemies can't safely exist, like a Wolverine hiding behind that wall, a Punisher's turret placed out of melee range, or a tight space where a Squirrel Girl ult would get insane value. On to target priority. Here's something that will instantly improve your gameplay. Understanding target priority in the current meta. So primary targets would be exposed strategists without cooldowns. A Luna without her freeze might be easier to take down than a Cloak and Dagger who still has their dark teleportation available. Duelists who have used their mobility. Vanguards who are out of position. Secondary targets would include strategists with defensive abilities available, duelists with escape options, and well-positioned vanguards. Let's briefly talk about positioning. Off angles. Always try to create crossfire situations. High ground control. Maintain vertical advantage whenever possible. Rotation paths. Have multiple escape routes planned. And a few deeper combat tips. Sound cues. Try to keep track of teammate deaths, enemy flank footsteps, or Iron Man buzzing around. Ultimates is a given, but also abilities. For example, after you use Venom's E for additional health, it has an audio cue that lets you know when the bonus HP is about to wear off. Number 2, visual clarity. Focus on the task at hand. Whatever it is you're doing, don't let something else distract you. For example, if you're playing Rocket and Spider-Man just got an uppercut on you, but your team needs to hold point to win, you don't need to move your screen to look at Spidey necessarily. You can use one of your dash abilities to disengage while still keeping your healing crosshair over your Magneto holding the point for your team. Number 3, momentum management. This is a big one. Understanding when to press an advantage and when to reset. The best players know that sometimes backing off at 70% health is better than pushing for a kill. You'll learn this over time, but even if you're the new buffed Iron Fist, Going into a 1v4 is usually an instant nope and hey, I need to disengage immediately sign. Tip number 5, advanced survival techniques. This might be the most important tip of all. You know what separates average players from the elite? It's not their aim, it's their ability to stay alive. The current meta is punishing, with heroes like Thor and Psylocke able to punish any positioning mistake. Let's cover advanced survival strategies that top players use consistently. Health management. First, let's talk about effective HP pools. This isn't just about your base health. Understanding damage reduction timing, like the Thing has a 10-second cooldown on his E damage reduction. Shield management and layering. It might not always be optimal to always hold your shield up as a cap or strange. Try pacing yourself when you can and holding your shield to block key moments, but letting your shield down when you can absorb a little bit of damage or know your strategists have you covered so you can deal damage. Health pack rotation pass. We've already covered this. Strategist line of sight maintenance. You should be constantly looking around in this game. Zoom out mentally. Turn around every chance you get to see if your strategists are getting attacked, or if you're the strategist, look up in the sky often if you have any flyers on your team. Look around you and to the sides for potential flankers and bump up your actions per minute. Always be thinking, how can I bump up my APM? See, we're getting nerdy now. You're welcome. Always be doing something. That's the key here. Are you standing out in the open? Should you be further up and denying space or creating an off angle? Here's what you need to do. First, always have a plan. This could be an escape plan, or you know your Loki has their healing pools ready to go at a moment's notice. Second, understand your matchups. If you're playing against Wolverine, you need to track his cooldowns. If there's an Adam Warlock, try to bait out that soul bond before committing to a fight. Here's some role-specific survival techniques for duelists. Cooldown management. Never use your mobility ability aggressively unless you're confident you can get value from it. Health threshold awareness. Know exactly what combinations can burst you down. Positioning discipline. Maintain off angles without overextending. In resource trading, sometimes trading your ultimate for survival is the right play. For vanguards, field economy. Don't waste shields on poke damage. Space creation, leverage your high HP to push the enemy team back. Ultimate banking, save defensive ultimates for counter engagement. You can use aggressive ultimates in defensive ways. Have you ever seen two Doctor Stranges ult at practically the same time? Who generally wins that fight? The Strange who ulted second may have the advantage if they manage to ult the first Doctor Strange, so he gets little to no value from his ult. This is a 2-for-1 kind of ult. You essentially canceled their Strange ult and you killed some of their team, ideally, with your ult. Huge dubs. Rotation timing. Know when to give space and when to hold ground. Generally, this is numbers related. If the enemy team has 5 players up, but you're down to 3, you probably need to give them some space. Calm down there, big guy. For strategists, positioning mastery. Stay just at the edge of your effective range so you don't get whittled down by chip damage or give the enemy team easy shots, but be mindful when you do this. If you're too far back and the enemy team has divers, you could be in trouble. You can still position back to do it in safe ways, like knowing your team can easily pivot and help you out, or making it more difficult for divers to get to you by knowing the layout of the map and common rotation paths. Line of sight management. Always have cover available and know where all 5 of your other members are at all time. You are the rubberneck of the group. Cooldown tracking. Keep escape abilities and CC for when you're dove on. Ultimate usage. Sometimes using your ultimate defensively wins more games. Sometimes using your ult more aggressively to maintain momentum wins more games. Really think about how your ult impacted the game after every time you use it. Here are some general survival concepts. These aren't hard and fast rules, but it helps give a rough guide on how to navigate certain situations. The 40-60 rule. Never take a fight below 40% health unless it's to save the point. Consider resetting when below 60% if you don't have cooldowns. Definitely track enemy ultimate economy when making these decisions. Number 2 would be crossfire prevention. Always be aware of potential crossfire angles. Use natural cover to limit exposure to multiple enemies. Understand which heroes can create and abuse sudden crossfire situations. A Hela or a Hawkeye on an off angle demands more attention than a Wanda from the same distance. Number 3 would be resource trading. This is crucial. Understanding what resources are worth trading. Trading your escape cooldown for an enemy ultimate is almost always worth it. Trading a chunk of your health for an enemy strategist's main cooldown can often be valuable. Try to avoid giving up positioning for damage unless it secures a kill. Common survival mistakes to avoid. panic ultimate usage. Don't use defensive ultimates after you're already in a bad position. Save them for turning fights or creating space. Number 2 would be poor health pack timing. Don't grab health packs at 80% health unless it's to prevent the enemy team from using it or you're in an isolated fight. Of course, there are exceptions here, but this is just a general idea. Number 3 would be overextension. One of the most common causes of death in high level play, I would say. Always ask yourself, what's my escape plan? Can my strategist see me? How much damage are they capable of dealing right now? Consider your team's ability to help you if you get in trouble. Maybe Penny can web someone for you or Magneto can bubble you. I wouldn't always rely on that though. Let's cover match-specific survival real quick. Against dive compositions, play closer to your team. Strategist, I'm really looking at you here. Save certain cooldowns for peel. Track enemy engage abilities. Against poke compositions, use natural cover aggressively. Time your pushes with team cooldowns and don't let them chip you down. And against pick compositions, you could maintain a buddy system potentially. You could clear flanks systematically, like sending in your Venom and Iron Fist simultaneously to create twice the chaos. You could keep track of their potential cooldowns as well. These are just general rules of thumb. If you're new to this or struggling where to start, let me break down exactly how you could implement everything we've covered today. Here's a little implementation roadmap for you guys. You don't have to do exactly this, but again, it's just an idea. Week 1 focus, start with point control and positioning. Here's a daily practice routine example. First 3 games, focus purely on point presence. Next 3 games, practice high ground control. Final games, combine both while tracking enemy positions. Week 2 focus, add resource management to your gameplay. Start tracking enemy cooldowns, even just one person and one ability of theirs. Practice ability conservation, master map positioning. Learn ultimate charge rates, who charges faster than who on average. Week 3 focus, team composition mastery, understand meta compositions. 222 is still very much on top currently. Practice flex picks for different team needs. Learn counter picking strategies. Master at least 1 hero in each role, but aim to know 2 of each, I would say. And here are some semi-advanced implementation tips for solo queue players. Focus on self-sufficient heroes initially, like Venom or Psylocke for example, or pretty much any strategist. Learn to play around random team compositions, master carry potential heroes like Winter Soldier or Thor, or just get unbelievably good at any hero that you can carry the majority of your games with. Practice shot calling and team coordination. This is optional, but it helps. For team players, you could develop set plays with your regular teammates. You could practice ultimate combinations, create custom scrimmage scenarios, review VODs together. There's a lot you could do. And let's cover implementation mistakes you should avoid. Don't try to implement everything at once. Don't blame teammates while learning. Don't get discouraged by initial failures. And don't skip fundamentals for flashy plays. Listen, I know this is a lot to take in, but here's the thing. Every single top player started exactly where you are right now. The difference? They committed to improvement. They practiced these concepts consistently. They didn't just play, they played with purpose. Remember, track your progress, record your games if you can, review your mistakes, keep practicing these concepts. If you're struggling with any of these concepts, drop a comment below. I read every comment and try to help where I can. Share your success stories too. Nothing motivates the community more than seeing others improve. Believe it or not, some people care. There's a lot of good out there still. And speaking of good, thank you so much for watching and thank you so much for your support on the previous video. I was not expecting that kind of overwhelmingly positive feedback. I love making these videos, so just thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more Marvel Rivals content. Until next time.